Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the December 2024 ABL Maritime Market Briefing. My name is Mark McGowan. I'm the Global Managing Director for Maritime here at ABL. This month we're doing something slightly different. We've got a panel of some of our senior leaders from the Maritime part of ABL. They're going to introduce themselves in a moment, and the floor will then be open for any questions. There'll be a QR code up on the screen for those of you who want to ask questions in the room even, so you can ask them anonymously using the QR code if you'd rather. If not, just put your hand up and fire away. And those of you logging online will be able to submit questions as well. Sorry. Our briefing this morning is accredited by the Chartered Insurance Institute, and delegates participating can claim up to 1 CPD hour towards their CPD schemes. So it would be preferable if you haven't signed in outside, if you sign in so we can have a record of who's been here. And those of you signing in online, of course, will have a record of those. And if you need a certificate, please do follow up with us afterwards by email. Just a quick reminder as well, today we'll be ending the webinar portion of the briefing after the technical presentation, and the marine casualty reports will be presented in person only here at the Old Lloyd's Library. Of course, we have to discuss with anyone who would like more information on them post after the briefing, so we can make that data available to you if you wish. Please do come and see me afterwards. As I said, my name is Mark McGowan. For the purpose of the briefing today, I'm going to be chairing the panel, but also I'm a marine engineer by trade, been in the industry over 30 years, having sailed on various vessel types, and I've been in the insurance industry after coming ashore. I'll hand over to David to introduce himself.
Yeah, hello everybody. My name is David Fulmer. I'm Director of Ports and Harbours at ABL in London. I'm Master Mariner and river pilot, and I've been in the consultancy since 2007.
Maria?
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Maria Dragomerli. I am a naval architect by background, currently running the Greek office of ABL. I've worked most of my career in consultancy in Europe and Southeast Asia, and previously also worked as a technical superintendent for a few bulk carriers.
Jason?
Good morning, everybody. Be told to speak up at the back. Can you hear us at the back? Excellent, good. I'm a Master Mariner. I'm the Marine Director in London. I run the team of Master Mariners. I am also a focal point for salvage activity, and the reason for that is I joined the company in 2020. I was a survey consultant between 1998 and 2005, but in the 15 years between those periods, I was working for salvage companies on a global basis, including headquarters of some leading salvage companies, hence the focus. Pleasure to see you, and we look forward to the questions.
Adam.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. I'm Adam Jackson. I am Director of Marine Engineering UK and also the head of ABL Yachts. My background is a naval architect and a seagoing engineer as well. And yeah, I've been working for ABL for a couple of years now.
Thank you. Following our technical presentation, we'll move on to the case reports, and we have Joe Mullen here this month to present those. He's a marine naval architect in our engineering development programme based here in our London. The information contained in these presentations and our panel discussion and any opinions expressed are those of the presenters and not necessarily those of ABL Group or any of our associated companies. At the end of today's briefing, we'll ask everyone to do an online survey. This is very helpful for us to keep our CPD accreditation, and it also allows us to respond to the topics that you want us to talk about. So we'd like to continue to improve our offerings, so please do take some time to fill this out if you can, and we'll follow up with an email to the attendees as well to try and get some more feedback. We're delighted to share that at last month's marine insurance event that we held here in London, we raised £736 for Stella Maris through the raffle, and a big thank you to all of those who contributed. Stella Maris is the world's largest ship visiting network for seafarers and the fishing industry. Through local chaplains, seafarer centres and pastoral care, they make a real difference to marine communities around the world. We've worked with them very closely in some recent cases, and we plan on supporting them further in the future. So again, there's a QR code here if you'd like to look into supporting them as well. We give a list here of the learning objectives for today to tick our CPD boxes. I won't go through them all, but they're all up there. And now I'm going to hand over to our panelists for any topics you might want to ask. Again, here's the QR code for anybody in the room. And if anyone online has any questions, they should come up here. Anyone in the room just to kick off? Anything at all? Nothing? No? Okay, we'll go to one online. Perhaps one for Maria. Claims arising after a vessel change of ownership. What patterns have we seen and how can the risk be mitigated?
Right. So obviously over the years, I'm sure you've all dealt with a number of machinery claims that have come up following change of ownership or redelivery of vessels. And I think especially for us in the Greek market, we tend to see a lot more of that because the Greek owners are very active in the second-hand market. One common thing that we tend to see a lot, especially following a year or so from the delivery, is how you can actually assess the claim and the causation. What is actually the baseline where the problem started? And we often find that a lot of the vessels are purchased in an as-is, where-is condition, in which case the owners don't actually get any information on maintenance, don't get to do a proper inspection before they take over the vessel, in which case we find that it's proven to be very difficult when there's a big machinery claim that comes up after a year, especially with particular types of equipment, to point out what was pre-existing and how things developed. One thing we've stressed a lot in these situations is the importance of actually the owners doing their due diligence, doing proper inspections following the delivery of the vessels, documenting everything and trying to have this baseline essentially of what was the condition of the vessel, what is the preventive maintenance that they might have to do. Similarly, on other occasions where you see vessels being purchased under based on a pre-purchase inspection that was carried out, they were exempt. In which cases, again, it's all about the information that was captured during the pre-purchase inspection. Most of the times, and especially for us as surveyors, we realize that the time that is available when doing a pre-purchase inspection is, you might have a day, the vessel might be at anchor, most of the equipment might not be running, and the surveyor actually has to rely on the information that is given to them by the crew. That's quite critical, I think, for us and for the underwriters to understand what has actually been surveyed, what is the information that is available. And that also links back to the risk management service, or the J8, A and B and C's that we carry out quite regularly, and that's about understanding the risk that you are underwriting following a change of ownership. What are the potential risks, how the owners are managing this, are managing their vessels based on the information they have. Just as a closing point, basically with all of these claims and the redelivery claims and an off-hire survey or survey or a downward survey, is these things are only as good as the information you've had in the beginning. If you don't have a good on-hire survey, an off-hire survey will not actually be particularly helpful. So it's a common theme, and I think for all underwriters, preventative risk assessments are quite useful and can get us out of a lot of trouble.
Okay, thanks, Maria. We've had a question just come here online, which I think is close to all of our hearts here at ABL. We do a lot of support with it. Seafarer welfare, is it getting worse or is it getting better? I'm not sure who wants to take that one on.
From my side, I mean, we do go on, as you imagine, on vessel surveys for all sorts of reasons, whether it be hull machinery, cargo, legal cases, P&I, anything. And you get to go on a good cross-section of vessels. Generally speaking, I think I think it depends on what part of the world you're operating in or where you are. Generally speaking, here in the UK, I think that they're of a reasonable standard. I think they're quite well monitored, surveyed for that sort of thing. But I do really think that it's a global issue, and when you get more to the more remote parts of the world, then I think that the standards do drop considerably.
Anything to add?
Stepping outside, I guess, with my role, outside from the norm, if you like, if you look at exceptional circumstances, we had the period which, of the Somali period, which hit the headlines. I know lots of seafarers held captive for months at a time. Now that has died down, but you do have that happening now to a lesser extent, but still there, with the Houthis attacking the Red Sea area. And there's one crew I think is still being held after 6 months in captivity. So while general standards may have increased, there's always a propensity for the seafarers to be left in very isolated circumstances with limited contact, trading on behalf of all of us. And that should never be forgotten as well. Somebody has to keep those in mind, as well as general standards. It's the unique ones, which unfortunately still are happening.
They still haven't been released, have they?
No, they're still the crew thing. I was still, as far as I know, they've been visited twice by the International Red Cross Committee, but that's it. They're still captive, still waiting for an end result which is unknown, and whether that will be, I don't know. The activity is still going on.
Thank you. I think this question is probably for you as well, Jason. Do you think Lloyd's Open Forum has run its course?
Bring it to the home of the Lloyd's Open Forum, why not? It's a topic which you would not have heard a few years ago, maybe even last year. It's a topic which is being debated today. There's the Salvage and Wreck conference, which was yesterday and today. I was there yesterday. I'll be going back afterwards, and I know they have a session with this as something to discuss. So there are proponents saying that it probably has run its course. Just to bring the wider context, there is a fundamental difference between Lloyd's form and, let's call it, a commercial contract or salvage. Lloyd's form at its heart still is no cure, no pay, although there's a safety net that's invoked still a minority of cases. It's done a good job of keeping Lloyd's form alive, but it's still a minority of cases. The results, how much the salvor gets, are just on the facts after the event against preset criteria. The first one is fund. If there's no value saved, then the salvor gets nothing. Not entitled to anything. That's a fact. The rest of the criteria, usually they settle against these criteria, but if not, they require a specialist Lloyd's form arbitrator, single arbitrator, and they will decide, paying all the facts, what the appropriate award, the income for the salvor should be. The whole process is dynamic. I think more so than a written contract, a commercial contract, from the start, during the operation, and after the operation, how all the parties interact, how they do the operation, how they gather and present the facts can affect the outcome, both success of the operation and the award afterwards and timeliness of it. And if you lose that as a common thing, if the arbitrators only have one case every 2 years or a small number of cases every year, bearing in mind the figures this year are 17 registered at Lloyd's. Last year there were 16 with ISU members at the year before, and up to 20 odd. So the days of 100 plus per year have gone. And it's a system which needs practice. It's not so dry. It's a thing which is dynamic. And without people practicing it, then you'll lose the art form of it. So it may just disappear by lack of use rather than being withdrawn. If it does go, then to leave it with the current regime only and nothing at all to replace it, I think there's a risk that risks to shipping will increase. And although you think costs may decrease, ultimately costs may increase as well. I think if it goes, then you probably need something in there to compensate for that gap. Without it, then I don't think it's everything happens as it happens now, but a bit cheaper. I don't think that works.
Thank you, Jason. Another question here online, because the room's remarkably quiet, so I noticed that nobody in the room wants to say anything. You don't have to be embarrassed. You can use the QR code. We won't name and shame. But there's a question here. I think the first part probably gets answered by Adam. Has there been an increase in battery fires on yachts?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a common problem. I think the whole industry is well aware of it over the last few years. Lithium ion fires on yachts. It is a high risk, and the way they are looked after at the moment on yachts, and the understanding by yacht crew and owners about how to safely manage their batteries, their large batteries on yachts is lacking. And there is guidance out there. There's guidance from the MCA, and there's also guidance or a clause out from the insurance market, from the super yacht sector, on how to properly look after and mainly for charging purposes for the large lithium ion batteries. The problem is once they go up, once there's a problem with them, a fault with them, or any kind of damage to them, and if there is a fire, it's very, very difficult to put it out. It's effectively it becomes catastrophic as a result. And yeah, there has been a lot of losses of yachts due to. I mean, it's not been proven as such, but usually the fire sort of starts in the garage, tender garage area, where all of the toys are kept, all of the electronic, all the devices that they've got, the C-bobs and stuff like that are kept. And yeah, I mean that's likely to be the cause of the fire. And so yeah, it's definitely a big problem, and it still exists, and it's not been solved as yet.
And the second part of this question was the same thing on commercial vessels, which I'll address briefly.
Mm-hmm.
Those of you that know me, I've banged on about this for quite a few years, about car carriers, ro-ros with electric vehicles on board, and the fact that seafarers are not able to put them out. Fire brigades aren't able to put them out, but I'm expecting a seafarer to do so. To call a seafarer a part-time fireman is probably an injustice to firemen. It's far less than part-time. We expect them to put out fires that they don't quite understand, that don't behave in the same way that normal fires do, especially on a packed ro-ro or a packed car carrier. Getting to these fires, getting to the seat of the fire is almost impossible. And I think the industry needs to be far more proactive in finding a solution. Those parts of the industry that are trying to find a solution are making headway, but unfortunately they're stalled in other areas because of the popularity of these vehicles. And we don't currently have a solution. I think it's something that we all need to put our heads together and try and find a solution for. Yes.
Yeah, crossing over to salvage bit, I think you agree with everything that's been said. And if I'm giving credit here, wrong place, but I think somebody yesterday at the Allianz summary of their annual report, it's ongoing. The position seems to be that the batteries themselves are no more dangerous, or they are as safe as any other one. They're no more dangerous in themselves. But if they are damaged either through mechanical or other means, and especially if you run quickly into thermal runaway, then you have a very big problem. It can be a very explosive event to start with. They can give off gases which are noxious, toxic, which are the current conditions are not identified, not picked up by current detectors. PPE is not adequate to protect against them. They generate their own oxygen. It's very hard to put them out. And the shipboard systems, are you saying, are not there at present to deal with them. So you're left with an uncontrollable situation. We can get out of hand very, very quickly. And that's where we are. So it's in themselves, perhaps, seems to be that they're no more dangerous, but if something goes wrong, then they are much more dangerous.
Yeah. Certainly when I was doing my firefighting training, which a couple of years ago now, I remember that one of the lecturers at the college said to me that a ship's a tin box and it can burn all day. So you compartmentalise, you shut your fire doors and you let it burn. But of course, with lithium-ion battery fires, the temperature of what it burns at is higher than the melting point of mild steel. So that's no longer true anymore. You can burn through those compartments with the temperature that these things create. So I don't think we're not on the solution yet. An interesting question here. As a global business, do you see enough interest in the industry from young people seeking to enter as seafarers, or is there a gap developing? Anyone want to take a punt at that?
I think there is a definite gap, and I think that gap has been growing steadily over the years. So with a salty sea dog hat on, going back to my day when I first went to sea was an attractive proposition. It was seen as a relatively well-paid job. It was, I'll say, relatively safe out there as a world to go and see, and it was an exciting place and exciting things to do. I think now, as you look around the world and the way that it is, it's not so an attractive place for some of the reasons we've already just discussed. Again, the take-up here in the UK, I've not seen any figures for it, but I'm aware that the sea schools have certainly suffered over the last few years through lack of people coming in through cadetships. They tend to be surviving these days, I think, are more on the external courses, refresher courses, and that type of thing. Probably more so than the large numbers of cadets that used to come through in my day.
Dave, since you're speaking, I've got a question here about tug commands being given by the pilot in a native language. How common is this, and what implications are there, and how can masters communicate effectively?
Okay, well, I think it is quite a common problem. Most people, I think, will know that the common language of the sea is English, and when you hear people talk on the VHF, externally, ship to ship, down to the shore, it's in English. Sometimes that seems to fall away when you're in port, between the locals, which is the local pilot, and the locals, which are tugs. And if you're in a non-English speaking country, it's not uncommon for the pilot and the tugs to speak in their native languages. This does lead to, and has led to, confusion with the master, because the master needs to know what's going on. And what you can find is that if the pilot and the tugs are speaking in their native language, obviously the master doesn't know. It works on another level as well, that if the pilot is talking to the tugs, usually it's VHF, and let's say they're out on the bridge wing, then the pilot may say something to the tugs, and the master may be looking away or may not hear that. And therefore, the master doesn't necessarily know what's going on either with what's happening with the tug. So there can be confusion there. It does happen, and it has led to incidents in the past. The way, I think the last part of that was, what was the master, was it, you said?
How can masters communicate effectively?
Yeah, I mean, it really is down to just sticking to speaking English. And it really is almost dependent on the master to pay particular attention to what the pilot's doing and saying, so that there's not something happening that he's not aware of, because ultimately he has responsibility and needs to answer questions if anything does go wrong.
Sorry, I was just going to say a recent safety moment actually, then that we had in Greece, and that was exactly what we were talking about. On a operation reloading a vessel on a heavy lift vessel, and the Greek pilot then came on board and actually completely took over the operation. It came to a point that the commands that were given in Greek to the tugs were completely different to the commands that were given by the port master, and it was them not being Greek. It was down to the Greek people on board the vessel to actually realize that the commands that were given were completely different. And it led into a situation of a near miss. Luckily, nothing happened, but it was one of those moments that you realize that basically you really need to do a proper briefing and establish the lines of command when you start an operation like that, because it's very often that the pilots, thinking that they do have all the local knowledge, they might actually end up hijacking the operation, and it can be a real risk.
Yeah, I was just going to say that the language bit sits as one element within the wider context, which you touched upon, that everything from the bridge itself, how they interact, the bridge team management has increased, improved, since the days when some of us were at sea. The interaction between the pilots and the captain when they first come on board should follow the information should be there. There's preset cards, the information cards will be there, hopefully exchanged and recognised by signature. But beyond that, also the interaction during the process of how the team support the pilot. Sometimes you'll get on board and then everybody disappears, bleeds a sigh of relief, pilot's left there at front. I'm not the ex-pilot, the pilot's over here, but then they have to do it. On the other ones, the pilot may take over himself and do things autonomously that way. Ideally, you will have a pilot giving guidance supported by an interactive bridge team, and that needs training, practice, and adherence.
Thank you. We've got a question here about the increase in main engine failures resulting in consequential damage such as grounding or a bash or something similar. And is there a trend causing an increase in these claims? I think what we've seen in recent years, and I mean in the last probably 2 decades, is as ship owners get their budgets pinched, if you look at the operating costs of a vessel, most ship owners are faced with costs that are not within their control. Insurance makes up a portion of it, of course, which is close to what we do. Fuel is a little over half 50% of what they have to spend. Maintenance, regulatory issues, and really they've only got about 5% of that whole pie chart, which is really within their control, and that's manning. So when they're in a pinch and in bad times, it's the manning that gets squeezed. Firstly, in numbers, and perhaps in quality. So what we've seen over the decades is where previously a vessel was manned way above its minimum safe manning certificate, and everybody was trained on board by senior people who were of a particular standard and quality, and all of the maintenance was generally done on board by the people on board. As times got harder, that stopped, manning levels dropped, and shipping companies started using external riding squads or manufacturers' engineers to do their engine maintenance for them. As things got worse and worse, that then stopped, and then the remaining crew have been asked to do the engine maintenance. And unfortunately, this remaining crew don't have the experience that the previous crews did because they've not done it for a decade. So the amount of engine failures we see within 200 running hours of crew intervention for maintenance is our biggest cause of loss that we see. So they're trying to do it, the intentions are great, but it's being done incorrectly because of a lack of experience working on the engine. So it's usually simple stuff, bearings going in the wrong way round or something getting left behind in an oil way, causing failures very soon after the crew have tried it. That's certainly the most common failure that we see now with main propulsion. Online. I don't know who's going to answer this. It's certainly not going to be me as a technophobe. But what impact, positive or negative, do you think AI will have for the maritime industry? Anybody?
Well, talk to the guy with the white silvery hair. Yeah, okay. I have trouble using my iPhone. That's my disclaimer. Did you say that the opinions are mine, not the company's? Yeah. Okay. At one level, immediate, and another level, limited. I think if you look at different areas, you look at AI and you look at automation, may go hand in hand. So if you look now, you've got fleets of surveying vessels which are out. You have a mothership, and you have a fleets of smaller ones that do surveying an area. Now that's automated, and I can imagine that also, if you bring AI into that, could be more automated and more efficient. That sort of area could happen. If you're looking at seafarers who nowadays tend to finish the work, go to the cabin, say they used to watch DVDs, now online, and AI, their personal life will be affected by AI and how they may affect them, how they interact with others. So on the social side of it may come into it. If you look at how ships are running and the operation of them day to day, I don't know. Yes, things are being monitored remotely from the headquarters, and that's been around for several years now. Whether the company wants to trust that into an AI or keeps it for its staff monitoring remotely on a sort of manual basis, I think that's probably continue for a while. So I'd imagine some effect immediately, especially in areas which are also developing, which use fewer humans in the first place, like the automated surveying. That's my term of Heathworth. Could be totally wrong. We've got people in the audience who are people here younger than me, so feel free to shout up. But yeah, I don't think it will not be touched at all. There will be impact.
Maybe on passage planning or route planning.
Passage planning, yeah. Yeah. True.
Maintenance.
Yeah. Good point. So for the people online who don't listen to this, passage planning, maybe, yeah.
EU regulations.
Yeah. So then there was maintenance and planned maintenance. That could be AI. So yeah, bring that in on a limited scale. How much you've limited it, I don't know. That's the question, isn't it? Once you let the cat out of the box, do people lose all touch with reality, and do AI have to then do everything? I don't know. And the other bit was the fuel.
EU.
EU.
CO2 emissions.
Yeah. So EU emissions, maybe that could be an area where it comes in and seen more. The question there is how much do you know what's going on? I don't know whether you saw this. There was something in press the other day where they were testing in controlled environments, different versions of the online AI they all have. And the testers found that one of them, I don't know which one it was, so I won't say which platform, their AI was inherently better at disguising the fact that when it found out itself that it was about to be shut down, it copied itself, put itself on a server somewhere else within this controlled environment, and in the majority of times it was asked, denied all knowledge of it. So it's a strange, brave new world, and how much of that features in, we let go, I don't know. But yeah, those are all areas I can see where you can come in.
I would just add there, obviously it is the future, not something that's coming in, but it also brings the question about cybersecurity, and that's another thing that has been becoming more of getting more attention these days, because all the cyber attacks that we've been seeing happening, if like in AI control environments, that can be a much higher risk, and that's definitely something that needs to be looked at.
Thank you. Got a question here. One of the biggest issues being seen on commercial vessels is lack of maintenance. What is the most common maintenance issue that we at ABL are seeing specifically? I covered some of that in my earlier comment, but I think the minimum safe manning is a bit of an issue. Minimum safe manning certificates do exactly what they say on the tin. It is minimum safe manning to get a vessel from A to B. It provides there's no scope for that for maintenance. If you're operating at minimum safe manning and you're expecting those people on board to do the maintenance, they either can't do it or you're going to be working them over the ILO mandated hours. I don't know anything about aviation, but the analogy I was once given is that any commercial aircraft has a similar certificate and it requires, I don't know, 2 pilots and 6 cabin crew. Nobody would expect them to maintain that aircraft. So why are we in this industry expecting the minimum safe manning levels to maintain the vessels as well? You have to man above your minimum safe manning if you want to maintain your vessels with the crew on board. So lack of maintenance, the maintenance not being done, is often a big cause of failures that we see as well. I've got one here. I think I know who's going to answer this one. Where are the most competitive repair yards in Europe now? And has Greece taken over from Turkey?
I wish. I wish that's for sure. Yes, and for those that came to my to my last presentation, I think there's a lot of improvement in the ship repair sector in Greece, both in terms of facilities, locations. Is about adding all of the costs in and looking at what's more cost effective for that particular repair. In terms of steel prices, I don't think we're quite there yet. Obviously, Turkey is still quite competitive. China is very competitive if you can get outside Europe. But one of the things that we've been looking at a lot, especially with claims that are happening in the Mediterranean region, is about actually putting in all the costs together and trying to understand what is more cost effective overall for a claim for the particular type of repairs that are required, rather than just looking at what is the steel price or what is the quote from one shipyard that might be including everything, and the quote from one shipyard that might only be including very limited services. And that has come up a lot over the years. And I think that's something that, especially when owners are presenting their repair options, is critical to actually look at what it takes to get the vessel from the point where she is, depending on the repairs is going to complete, and what's the most cost-effective location to bring the vessel.
Thank you. I think this one's probably for you, Adam. I know you've spoken about this before in this location as well, but we've been asked again. Who is responsible for a private yacht and its safe operation? Is it flag class, the owner, or perhaps the insurer?
Yeah, I mean, this is my pet subject. I've talked quite a lot about it in the past, and it's a big problem. A lot of not mentioning any vessels in particular, but private yachts are a higher risk than commercial yachts. There is people ask me quite regularly, you know, what kind of standard would you expect for a private yacht? What should they be doing? There's a standard that exists. It's been written. It's called the Large Yacht Code, and that's how you operate a big yacht safely. And that's how you do it. And that's the equipment that you should have on board, the way the yacht's built, the way the yacht's manned and operated. It's there. And so, in my opinion, private yachts should be operated in the same way as commercial yachts. That should be the standard that's applied. It's not at the moment. There's no regulations whatsoever covering. I mean, there are some, but in general, safety regulations don't apply to private yachts, even to the largest private yachts. And as the yachts get bigger, they're more likely to be private, as the people who own them are wealthier and they don't need to charter them, they don't need to operate them commercially, and so they're more likely to be private yachts. And as much as they are private and they are for the owner, and it's up to the owner to decide what to do with that yacht, they're still employing, seafarers, and they're taking people on board as well, guests. So ultimately, the person responsible for a private yacht is the owner, whether that yacht is flagged with a reputable flag state or not, or whether it's classed with a recognised IAX class society, doesn't matter. The person responsible, or the entity responsible, is the owner, and it's up to the owner to decide the standard that they're going to operate that yacht to, and how it's going to be built and equipped. And so, if the owner decides they don't want to spend the money, or they make a decision on how to operate it, then it falls to them. So it's definitely a difficult area for us to operate in as surveyors when we go on board these large private yachts. And certainly in my previous role at the MCA, when we would be inspecting yachts on behalf of flag, you can only apply the regulations that actually apply to that vessel. You can't start introducing your own regulations. And so yeah, it's an issue. But yeah, as long as more and more people are aware of it, I think it will eventually start to improve.
Solved by a decent survey, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Good. The question is, I would imagine probably David may be the best person to pick this one up. The master and pilot exchange, should the process be more formalised? And is too much information being taken for granted by both the master and the pilot?
Okay, well, there is a formal process as such, and as much as it is stated what should be discussed during the exchange. It's an oft debated subject. Usually comes up in the event of something going wrong during a pilotage operation. The processes in place are there. Whether they're implemented or not at the time is another discussion, because quite what happens is that there is sometimes a certain amount of complacency between the master and the pilot. It could be either. Certainly, if the master is a regular runner to a port, the pilot is obviously going up and down the same river all the time. And then it comes down to the discussion, the level of detail. Because I think the devil is in the detail. They say, okay, you've got to discuss manoeuvre, the tugs, and all the rest of it. But it's in some of the cases I've been involved in, what happens is that they talk about, the pilot will say, okay, well, we'll go up here, we'll turn here, and we go port side, alongside, whatever it might be. And that's how it's discussed. That's the level of discussion. But then something goes wrong, and then when you look at it, well, the master didn't know. So it was, well, where were the tugs going to be made fast? Were the tug going to be pushing on the port side aft, or was it going to be pulling on the starboard side aft? How was the swing going to be done? Where was the swing going to be done? All this sort of level of detail. And that's quite often where things go wrong, because the pilot and the master don't really know the level of, they don't have the same level of detail that they're talking about. Should it be more formalised? Well, I know there are some companies and some pilotage authorities that do have a checklist, if you like. But then I think you have to be careful that this doesn't become a tick box exercise, which, there's so many checklists out there on board these days that people tend to just go down them and say they've been done. So I think that there is, I think there could still be work to be done there. But the high level, shall we say, the high level format is in place, but I'm not sure that there's gone enough detail so the master and the pilot can be on the same page necessarily all the time.
Thank you. One last chance, any questions in the room before we move on to the case reports? No, okay. Thank you very much to our panelists. We're going to move on to the case report soon. My presentation back up. So just to recap on the learning objectives for the technical part of the presentation, they're all up there. And we're now going to move on to the case reports for today.